In this video, we're going to think about the periodic table, but we want to ask ourselves, where does this come from and how do we use it as chemists? So in the periodic table, there are 118 unique elements, and the periodic table tells us about them. So if we look at a single element on the periodic table, we have 6 carbon, 12.001, and maybe it says carbon. So this tells us that the symbol is C, the name of that element is carbon, it is 12.001 grams per mole, and 6 tells us how many protons it has, also how many electrons it has. So this information is really helpful for scientists, but it turns out that the arrangement in the periodic table gives us other information. What that means is that how the periodic table is arranged is going to tell us about the behavior of elements in the same row or column. So the modern periodic table was developed by two scientists somewhat independently. So Mendeleev and Meyer. Mendeleev gets the majority of the credit, but prior to this, there were several other scientists who attempted to create periodic tables. There is one who attempted to make one based on groups of 8 in an octave, somewhat similar to how musical notes are composed. And then there were a few other variations, but Mendeleev is the grandfather of our current periodic table. So he organized his periodic table by increasing mass. If you look at the elements on the periodic table in general, that is the trend. So the thing that is probably the most interesting about Mendeleev's periodic table is that he left space for elements that had yet to be determined, gallium and germanium. So if you look at this table on the right, this is out of his paper from 1871. And so you can see both here and I think right here that there are two elements that he didn't know. Now, there are several other places where he left holes, but for gallium and germanium, he also predicted their periodic properties. So he predicted very accurately how much they would weigh, how they would behave, what they would do. So this periodic table was organized by increasing mass. And it turns out that the only change that has really been made between this periodic table and the periodic table we have today is that they are instead arranged by increasing number of protons, which with this a very few sections, they are also increasing mass. So this table, based on how things are arranged both in columns and in rows, are going to tell us how this periodic table functions. So in the next series, we are going to think about what these elements do, how they behave, and what the electron structure is in these.